Good morning.
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 Hi there. Dan, are you feeling better this week?
Not 100%, but definitely a lot better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll give it a couple minutes here. I was corresponding with Chris earlier this morning. I know he's going to zoom in. I apologize. Well, I guess it doesn't matter where we are. I'm working from my home office this morning because I have a in-district commitment at 11. So we will not be going till 11:30 today, but just wanted to let him know nobody needs to go to Hartford today because I won't be there. So we'll give it a couple more minutes, give people opportunity to sign in. All right, well, we can get started here. Dan, thank you for sending over those couple of articles. Beverly forwarded those on. And Chris sent me something last Thursday. He referenced the This Old House YouTube video. And of course, this morning is when I opened it up. So I forwarded it to Beverly. I think she forwarded it on. So forgive me for not getting that out sooner. It just talked about, they showed an example for those who didn't see it, examples of, history of the polybutylene piping. And also they focused on the removal and replacement and just showed that it is possible. Of course, in this, it was like a 7-minute segment and they solved the person's problems in 7 minutes. So, went in and removed all the piping and it was real smooth and simple. And I'm sure that that's not the case in every situation. You can't solve everything in a 7-minute segment of a TV show, but there was some practical display of how to remove and replace these. So I wanted to, again, I wanted to get Chris and then Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot, but part of what we are tasked, well, let me just step back into homework for me is I know that it was mentioned that we're looking for a plumber. I reached out to one potential person who does not have the time to participate. So I've got, I've been a general contractor for a lot of my life. And so we've got plumbers. I'm just trying to, think about somebody who may have the time and can, be able to spend the time here and articulate to this group. And so the person I had thought of, that's not a match for every single one of the contractors we worked with. If I just think of, aptitude for and patience and that sort of thing. So at any rate, I guess if anybody has a suggestion who they, a plumber you'd like to talk to, I'd be happy to invite that person to the group. Otherwise, I do have somebody else in mind but didn't find out until Monday that this person wasn't interested. So, Mike, I'd like to put you on the spot if you don't mind, Mike Tortora, that is. And then we'll open it up to discussion. Mike's in the indoor air quality. That's part of the area of expertise. And what we're tasked with doing is, we want to evaluate the connection between the polybutylene pipes and indoor mold. Whether such pipes are a contributing factor to mold growth, which they are if they're leaking, they could be if they're leaking, and the impact of mold on the health of residents and potential solutions such as early intervention options to prevent mold growth in buildings containing such pipes. So I think this, stating the obvious, if the pipes are leaking and it's unknown, we're looking at a potential mold situation. But I'd like to, maybe Mike, maybe you could offer some insight as to how we can talk about the mold, the impact of mold on the health of residents and potential solutions, if we just focused on that sentence.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I can give you what I know. I'm not a healthcare professional or anything like that, although I did work in a hospital for 22 years. But basically, I would say that what we're looking at. So for this type of situation, if you've been in the sort of remediation business before, and I've been doing work with several remediation contractors, but also I do work with just homeowners that have water issues and they want me to test for mold, that type of thing. So what we find typically is when we have these, we all know that mold is in the environment all the time. So it's whether or not we have high levels of mold in an indoor environment that affects the air quality is the question. So typically when I get a call from a homeowner, I'll go out and they may be having health issues like allergic sort of reactions to mold, like, sort of like cold symptoms, sore throats, headaches, that type of thing. It could be because of the air quality, but it also could be from a specific type of mold. So what we normally see in houses or like residential areas, even in like commercial buildings, is we see background levels of molds, things like Aspergillus, Penicillium, which are very similar types of molds. Cladosporium molds, those are common indoor molds. Like you will find those in any room of any house, any carpet, because they're always in the air. So what we try to see is, if there's a water source, and do we have high levels of mold in the area, in the indoor environment, and if so, could that be contributing to the health of the individuals? With these types of other leaks where we have, so that would be a typical like water loss event, like a roof leak, a pipe burst, like one of those things, and we see the homeowner sees the issue and does take action fairly quickly, and then tries to dry everything out. They'll bring in a remediation contractor, try to dry everything out. That's when we see those types of molds sort of start to build up after 24 to 48 hours of wet building materials, things like soft paper type cellulose based building materials like sheetrock, ceiling tiles, that type of thing. The other types of molds what we might see, which have a little more of a reputation of being the toxic molds, which that isn't so much true. However, what we'll see with a slow leak that's not detected quickly is that we see, so something like for a pipe that has a pinhole leak in it, sort of the situation with the polybutylene pipes, but it really with any sort of piping could happen. Even copper piping can leak over time. Is that we get these molds called Stachybotrys or something along those lines, which is a slow growing mold. That has it takes a long time for that to grow. So you need a wet surface for a longer period of time. So that's more indicative of like a long-term water problem. Those are the molds that people say have the toxic sort of characteristics, which when they say that, what they're really talking about are some of the toxins that the molds give off. They're called mycotoxins, and there's a couple other different and that gives like the musty smell that you're all familiar with. but those aren't always toxic. Those can affect people in different ways. If you're not, if you're immunocompromised, or if you have certain type of underlying conditions, you could have more, that could have more of an effect on you. But people with normal sort of people that aren't immunocompromised, have regular immune systems, allergies are not out of the question. But it just depends on the person. It depends on what their tolerability is. Because, like I said, mold is something that's always in the air. And there are people that have allergies to it. So it's a varying amount of, response that people have, depending on sometimes the amount of molds that's there. So I've been in houses where we see mold in a lot of places and the individuals are not having any symptoms at all. Then there's other places where I have seen no mold and people have symptoms from, mold related allergies because of just the background levels. So it runs the gamut of what we're, from an air quality standpoint. So being an industrial hygienist professional, my job really is to see, what do we have? Are there any water sources? And then when we do sampling, what are we detecting? And then, as you all know, there's really no standard for mold. There's no safe level or unsafe level, like some contaminants, like asbestos, for example, has a permissible exposure limit that we all use as our, is it safe versus unsafe? For mold, we don't really have that. So what we do is we do sort of a comparison control sample at the same time that we do any indoor sampling to see, do we have elevated levels of mold in those areas? So given all that sort of investigative work and sampling compared with the person's response is how we kind of gauge the situation. So is that what you're looking for, Steve?
I think so. And to your a little background, yes, yeah, because I guess the trying to get at is that it's not, it affects different people in different ways. And you've got many different types potentially of mold. I don't want to oversimplify this. I want to make sure we're covering the purview of the, and I want to ask Harry a question in a second to get you primed, Harry. But I don't want to oversimplify it. I don't want to dumb this down. It's just I'm looking at what we're tasked with doing, and it is to, we've identified, looking at the polybutylene pipes were outlawed in 1995. So obviously it was a product that was put out that is substandard performance over time. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but they didn't perform, and they're no longer in use because they're faulty. So the pipes go in, they leak. A leak over time has the potential to cause mold. So it's like, so we're being asked to see if there's a connection between these pipes and if there's a contributing factor to mold growth. And like, to me, like the simple answer is yes. Like it, quite possibly, maybe not every single time, but I'm not going to say that every house that has these pipes has a leak, but there's a good potential for that. So I want to, so to me, again, just kind of cutting through it, the answer is, highly likely that these things are a contributing factor to mold growth, or could be if they're leaking and they go undetected.
Yep.
Then you've got the human piece of it, the health piece, which is, again, what's the impact of mold? I mean, we don't have a healthcare professional, Mike. I mean, your professional experience on this group, and maybe that's somebody who should be here, but like an allergist, I'm thinking of, but we've seen it in our daily lives that certain people are affected by mold. So again, it could be. So what I'm trying to figure out then, and I'll ask Harry, because I know that you're in if I recall, you're in your house or your association is experiencing issues with these. You're being affected, as are your neighbors. What type of, I think, looking for your recommendations on intervention options. This is the sort of thing where I think it gets more the meat of it. And anybody, after I make the statement, feel free to chime in after Harry. If I look at the most valuable role that we can play is letting people know these things exist. They could be in their homes, and solutions to deal with the issue after the fact if they're finding that they have an issue. And Harry, I'll leave it to you as to how you know, what would you like to see come out of this? You know, I leave it there.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And Mike, appreciate your breakdown of the mold and getting that understanding. Got an MPH, so I studied a lot of that during my time in grad school, and seeing the different volumes of work that our health department does as well. And so thinking about kind of the implications that this kind of has on the public, I think that, you know, if somebody is aware of, you know, a water issue, you know, before, you know, getting a home, I think that they understand that there's you know, possible mold issue. But I think this kind of borderlines on us residents had no idea about these pipes at all, and there was really no documentation and no information provided to the homeowners until just recently this year. And so some sort of and again, I don't know what the legislative appetite is, but you know, ideally some sort of solution that rectifies that. I mean, I think the fact that there could be multiple leaks, you know, throughout the entire complex as we speak right now, I think is an issue. And so understanding how we can maybe ideally pinpoint, you know, those leaks before they happen, or if there's some sort of way that we can do mold testing, you know, across the condo association campus there. But yeah, I mean, I know that I recently just saw that they put some limits on the PFAs. And so I don't know if that's, you know, again, if the powers that be have an appetite to take something that like that on to, you know, put some measurable limits around mold so that we can maybe do some testing to see proactively if there are currently leaks. But I do know that many of the pipes that have already failed have caused damage across multiple units. I do not, and I'm not aware of, I have not heard of any kind of long term mold remediation for those. You know, as you know, a unit on the third floor, the pipes can burst and basically trickles all the way down to the first floor. And, you know, when I'm thinking of, you know, major repairs and things coming in, I'm unsure if mold remediation is kind of on that list. So those are just some of the things that I'm thinking about. And, you know, obviously I think for me, the direction of kind of the insurance companies removing these pipes from coverage also puts, you know, extremely high liability on the homeowner. So there's this kind of public health risk as well as financial risk.
Can you, what's a PFA? Forgive me for asking, and maybe I know this answer, but it's not coming to me.
They're forever chemicals. Something I
Yeah, if you
typically do know, but yeah, fluoro, something. Yeah.
yeah, PFAS is a good
Oh,
example.
PFAS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heard of that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
All right, that I've heard of. Okay. PFAS. Okay. Okay, and you're saying that and one of the last things you mentioned was that the insurance companies are excluding if the building has polybutylene pipes, they're excluding them from coverage, or did I misunderstand that?
I guess what I'm saying is that the insurance companies are signaling that these are something that they're really not looking to continue to cover. You know, I was unable to go to our working group meeting last week, but I think we had the commissioner from the Department of Insurance speak, and as they reviewed, you know, Travelers obviously dropped us, and then our insurance increased over 150%. And so basically the pool of insurance companies that are willing and able to cover us is shrinking. And I'm basically just projecting out that I imagine at some point these pipes will be completely removed from coverage. You know, given just just the pricing moves, and they're obviously going to price people out of being able to be covered for these pipes. So
Okay. Is it, so I don't know what our, appetite or even our ability to do from the legislation. I guess legislation, we can legislate any type of laws. I don't know. Again, I guess to your point, the appetite, but would it be, if we're saying that we're going to take this step by step, would it be acceptable to this group to talk about at least let's just say that so a new buyer comes in, we've talked with, fire safety, smoke detectors, COs, those have become a mandatory part of the home inspection. Would it would a step taken of this group to, when a home inspection is being performed, that at least the presence of these pipes are identified for a potential buyer, so they're aware of what they're getting into? When you said, that you were unaware, is that oh, Dan, go ahead.
Actually, because he's a condo association, the rules are pretty different.
Okay.
Plumbers can't see in walls. So, and a home inspector can't see in the wall. But the association being aware of it, it should be in their condo docs and resale certificate, because if they're aware of it and there is an issue and they didn't disclose it, I would think the association itself has a liability. The interesting twist about the pipe is, and I did a ridiculous amount of reading. I sent like 3 links afterward,
Yep.
and then I just stopped because I could keep going.
Yep.
And there was something very unique about this product when it was sold and installed. And that was the fact that it was specifically sold and installed with a 30 to 40 year life expectancy. It was never expected to go beyond that. It wasn't designed for it.
Yep.
And there was actually 2 different class action lawsuits, one against the pipe maker and one against the company that made the fittings. And there were settlements, but the money is all used up. And there's no more money to be had. As a matter of fact, there was another attempted class action lawsuit on it, and basically the door was closed, saying, hey, you already had your bites at the apple, you're done.
Yeah.
So it's kind of frustrating, but I don't know how you can mandate, if you look at a normal disclosure, one property condition disclosure,
Yep.
it does state, are you aware of any plumbing issues, problems, yes or no? And, that is upon the homeowner to disclose. But unfortunately, it's going to disclose what they know or what they've seen, not what and frankly, most homeowners don't even know what this stuff is called.
Yeah.
I mean, there is so many. I mean, we know that they ended this particular type in 1995.
Yeah.
We know there's other plastic pipes that came out afterwards. Some of the early stages of those also had issues.
Yeah.
We tend to believe that we've gotten beyond on those issues, but we won't really know until the history books played out. So I guess from my perspective, it's already on the disclosure. I think it's a little disappointing that the association was oblivious to this and that they weren't aware of it when they purchased, because it should have been in the resale certificate. That's what it's for, to make them aware of any upcoming or potential expenses coming. This one got missed, and I for this complex, I think back, and you got to know, I've been selling real estate for 36 years. So unfortunately, I was really familiar with this issue, and the complexes in my area that had it, they've all replaced their plumbing since then. They did it years ago. But that doesn't address how do we address the places that still have the plumbing that is technically beyond its expected life already. I think there's got to be an education piece here. Everybody tends to think plumbing is plumbing. You put it in and it lasts 150 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's got to be an education piece in this, because, I mean, let's face it, most condo boards are made up of well-intended people that may not be aware of certain things.
Yeah.
I think you gotta somebody's got to educate them about this particular product, its life, the fact it's beyond the life expectancy, because you can't expect them to do any sort of planning or repair on an issue they're not aware of. So I don't know how you address the education issue. I think it's unfair to put it on the inspector because he's going to be sitting there guessing.
Yeah,
Well-
Dan, that's yeah, I appreciate the context, and Senator Anwar's aides did similar research that we've looked at essentially missed opportunities on class action lawsuits. The companies that made the pipes, some of them are now bankrupt, no longer able to find them, and so chasing down that piece is probably not our best use of resources, given just the non-existence of those companies, and obviously they're not placing or making those pipes today. And then to your other point, that yeah, it's unfortunate that as a condo owner, really what's inside the walls is on the condo association. But you know, to your point, you know, I think either wherever that was missed, you know, has basically led to the absence of any sort of planning or protection for the homeowners in relation to replacement of these pipes. And so, you know, to your point, as far as the education, yeah, I think educating, you know, condo associations on how to communicate this to new residents, you know, just educating even home inspectors, not that it's on them, but just understanding that there may be condos that have pipes like this, I think is important. But on the flip side, at the end of the day, these pipes are still here. There are still tax-paying residents that have to wake up with the stress and the public health implications of mold at any given day. I could be sitting on this call right now and my condo pipes could be exploding as we speak. And so I think that that is where most of my concern lies. And then the prospect of sometime in the near future, the full liability of these pipes are now on us. And so again, that's why, you know, we brought this issue up to the General Assembly and brought on, you know, all of the professionals and powers that be to put our brains together and think about how we can craft a meaningful solution to, you know, mitigate some of these public health and financial issues that residents of Connecticut are facing.
Okay. Well, it was, you know, when we voted on this to take this issue up, it was presented as an educational campaign, not so much that we were going to have that final solution or restitution. That was not part of, you know, we can make recommendations, but the way it was, some of it was, you know, there was some debate on the floor that I remember, which, you know, which expounded upon what we see in this one paragraph of our kind of our marching orders here. And a lot of it had to do with public awareness and education, which is why I, you know, part of the reason I got involved was to make sure that we can get that message out there. So I think, you know, step one would be, to me, it would be successful to make sure that we, I would consider this group successful if we make sure that somebody else getting into a situation like this down the road has the power of knowledge, to Dan's point, and Harry for that matter, you know, that before we go on to try to address things, you know, in the past, and certainly for this specific condo association. And I don't know if the group shares that sentiment. Yeah, but that was how it was presented to me, was to, you know, public awareness campaign of some sort that that we can make sure people are aware that these are in in some of our homes. So Dan, I just to talk about what you mentioned in terms of putting this on the inspector. It's been a while since I've seen a home inspection form, but if the home inspector is aware, maybe not a condo, because I understand you can't see in the walls, short of going into a cabinet or a, you know, if you've got access to the basement or a, you know, a vanity, in a residential home, you know, if you've got a basement or an area where you can see the type of piping, could we ask that the form be amended to include presence of polybutylene pipes noted. So at least it's aware. If, inspector is going to know the difference. Maybe the homeowner doesn't, but just a suggestion.
Well, there is no standard form for a home inspection. So the
Okay.
inspectors all have their own
Gotcha.
formats.
Okay, understood.
I would say that most of the home inspectors are catching this issue because the home inspectors are very aware of this issue.
Okay, all right.
One of the challenges that I've heard from a home inspector recently when I was talking to him, he brought up a situation that happened to him like 10 or 12 years ago, in which the plumbing was there and he missed it, but he missed it because where he could see had been replaced.
Yeah.
Again, going back to what's in the walls, he had no idea and no way to know.
Yep.
So I'm not sure perfectly how we address the education, but I think the associations are an interesting animal because there's condo associations all over the state, but we don't really have communication directly from the legislative end to the associations. I don't know how we create that to create dialogue so that they know to be looking. Unfortunately, and I'm looking at this guy with his third floor unit. Yeah, he's got a problem being on the third floor. I'd hate to be the guy on the first or the second floor, to be honest with you, because one at a time, those pipes are going to fail. And one at a time, they're going to be knocking on my unit to fix my damage again. I think I wouldn't love living there at the moment.
Yeah, and to Dan's point, I recently did discover that when they do find issues with the pipes, they're only replacing that section that burst and leaving the rest polybutylene. So any condo unit that has had a pipe leak or a pipe burst still has mostly polybutylene piping throughout the unit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there is. I'm a service provider to many multifamily. Well, our company, we do the cleanup when these leaks and fires and all that sort of thing occurs. So we've been members of the Community Association Institute, which is the collective group for condominiums. So I wonder if it would be beneficial to have to reach out to them. I mean, there's periodic education. They're providing education, assuming that the association is a member. The condo association is a member of the state organization. Would it be beneficial to either bring them into this discussion, or I can at least start a dialogue? I mean, I'm a paying dues member. I work with the two women who head up the association. They're actually located in Glastonbury, and to see, I could, between now, this time, and next week, I can certainly find out what their understanding of these pipes are and what they communicate to associations typically, how, if any, how is this education done?
I think that's pretty valid. I think that's strongly valid. Because again, if you've got the association, even if they're aware that they've got the plumbing, they may not be aware of the ramification of the plumbing.
Yeah.
So they're innocent, but accidentally doing damage to their association members.
Yeah, that's the exact question I had, Dan, is that what about if if it's found that the condo association did know of the pipes and did know that they were an issue, yet did not disclose it until a significant insurance issue?
Yeah, I certainly don't have the answer to that. Are you asking Dan? Or
yeah, anyone, but if that were to be found, the situation, and same for the copper piping as well.
Yeah. I mean, I live out on we're on well water, and out here in eastern Connecticut, and we have PEX in the house when we built the house. But I recall having the discussion about there was a certain period of time, even with copper, where there was some faulty copper, and then there was some perfectly good copper, but because we have high levels of
acidity,
minerals in our water, that it was you take a perfectly good pipe and there was a potential for well water to eat away at a perfectly good pipe over time. So we elected to go with X, but yeah, I guess it all depends, because you put that same copper in maybe a city water setting where the the minerals are controlled to some, the pH, you may not have an issue versus bringing it out to, the sticks out here in Hebron. Is that accurate from anybody validate that? I know we don't have a plumber on the call, but that's what I was led to believe by speaking with a plumber.
Right. And my understanding is that, and I want to say it was in the 90s, there was some experiments done with some exceptionally thin walled copper
Yes.
that
Yep.
led to early failure, like without a lot of, yeah. So, that was one of those short-term experiments that didn't work out.
Yeah. And they knew it pretty quickly within a few years,
Right.
3 to 5 years.
Right.
Certainly on well water. I know one of the builders who used that. He's infamous around the Glastonbury area for
Oh, geez.
his pipes leaking, because anywhere you can save a buck. Anyway,
Big difference between infamous and famous, not one
Yeah.
you'll get tagged.
yeah, he's infamous. He goes
So
by one. He goes by one name. You don't need a last name.
Okay.
At any rate, we won't.
Question.
We won't out of here. Yes, Juliet.
Hi, it's Juliet. So are you saying, so anything built between a certain time period has this? So in condo association, because I happen to live in if they
you're-
inform me or I get home, have a home inspection, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. You in the middle. Can you start over?
Yes, I currently live in a condo association. I didn't know anything about this. And like I said, my condo was built in 1974. So, and we've changed different property management groups. So I don't know. So how do people find about that? Just text it.
Hey, Juliet, you may want to try turning your
can't hear me.
video off to save some bandwidth. Looks like you may be on a train. They don't always have the greatest service. If you turn your video off, we probably be able to hear you a little bit better.
Yes. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay.
Yes.
So my thing is, I currently live in a condo association, and then there's property management that was behind property was behind me. They were built in 1974. Most of these buildings probably have the pipes, and if people are buying into a new property or anything, are they supposed to be informed about this? Because I wasn't when I bought my condo, so I don't know what type of piping I have inside my home. So
Yeah.
does that mean if something happens, the condo insurance is not going to kick in? Because I don't know. Just a couple of things. So if we're talking about education, letting people know, you're going to have to let people know that are going to potentially buy into a condo that they have a potential of having the mold issue or the piping issue, I should say. So, and who is it going to be on to fix that? Is that the condo association or the current homeowner or the person buying the property? So I think and it was stated by Harry, there's a financial thing, but it's also an educational thing because, like I said, I walked in, I don't know if I have that type of piping in my building. I don't know if they fixed it. I don't even remember them discussing that when I was buying my home. So how many people don't know about this?
Yeah, that's a lot in that question. I know that Dan talked about that. If the condo, Dan, I'm just going to summarize that. If condo association is aware of the presence of these pipes, they're supposed to disclose that, right? It's supposed to be in the docs.
If there's a problem with it, yes.
If there's a
Yes.
problem, okay.
Right.
But but if they've changed property management so many times, and the people that on the thing had passed away and did not, what do current people do?
You were just breaking up. Sorry, Juliet.
I
I'll
think
text
I can
it.
answer one of her questions that she
Okay.
brought up.
Go ahead.
She was asking about who's responsible. It depends on the association documents. There may be some where if it's an inside wall, it may be property of the unit holder. Usually it's a common charge because it's between the studs. So usually it is an association ownership. But the reality is, who's the association? The association is not the company hired to manage. The association is all of the owners of the units.
Yeah.
So when you sit there and you said that, is it the unit owners or the association? In reality, they're the same. So I don't know if that answered your question a little bit, but I think that clarification probably needed to be said.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, and I see it from that point of view. But again, if a person's buying a property and then come to find out they weren't informed of that, who do they go after? The person they bought it from? And something happens. So yes, I guess it is on us as the unit owners, but I don't know if that's fair if they're not informed. So
I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to play attorney here, but the rule of thumb with the residential property disclosure is so long as the seller honestly answered the questions to the best of their ability, there is no liability afterward because it's not a warranty. It's just the representation of the best of their knowledge. So I doubt it's the previous owner. And again, going back to, if the association is aware they have some of this plumbing, but have had no issues, they probably aren't disclosing it yet as a potential liability, even though they probably should be discussing it because it's beyond the life expectancy of the product. Again, when I did the reading and found it only had a 30 to 40 year life expectancy from the beginning, I don't think I've ever seen a copper pipe that said I'm only good for 30 years and then you're going to replace me. So this was marketed and sold right up front in an unusual way, in my opinion, which probably made it easier for the class action lawsuit. But we're beyond that conversation at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, well, I guess we answered some of Juliet's questions, and maybe Juliet, since there was some breaking up, if there were other questions, maybe submit them through Beverly in an email, and I'll try to get that out to the group this week to see if we can at least either answer it before the next meeting or be prepared to discuss it at the next meeting. Obviously I've going to look into getting a hold of the condo association and bringing that with me next week. Plumber, we talked about. Dan, I missed my notes from last week of building officials, so I'll try to look at that route as well, just to see if we have any, some more input there. I think at this point, I certainly want to make the focus of this group awareness and education, so we can prevent, others from, finding out the hard way. If there's any, again, we probably can't catch every situation, but if Harry, if you knew, kind of what you were getting into when you're buying your condo, that there's a potential for this, and maybe even if it's not disclosed and you don't know, maybe that causes you to ask the question and maybe push your home inspector or the seller or somebody else to, to try to rule out the presence of these pipes or confirm that they're here wherever possible. And then I think the next step is, if you're into this situation, what are some resources for people that, that's what we've asked to do. Exactly how we're going to get to the end. I guess it's going to continue to be a work in progress, but this is, just reading that. And Chris, now that you're on, I want to thank you for sending me that link. I looked at it yesterday and I sent it to Beverly. I'm sorry I didn't get it to the group earlier. So for those of you who haven't seen it, it was This Old House. Again, Dan sent a bunch of links, which I looked at a couple, but didn't go all the way through the list. So I think we're all learning a little bit as we go. So I think before, go ahead. Who saying something, Chris?
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it was a pretty good video. If you get a chance, definitely look at it, because it does deal with not only identifying it, but what's involved in replacing it and the potential costs. So it's, and a little bit about the time frame. So I'm just curious how many units have actually have this type of piping. Do we have any ideas how much was installed in Connecticut during that period of time? From the late 70s to the mid 90s.
Yeah, I know that in our other working group, Senator Anwar's aides have been trying to get to some of this research, trying to contact different building departments across towns. We're having some trouble getting kind of a global picture of that. But I think that that's something we ideally should get to by the end of this working group, is kind of quantifying that, because I think it's us 160 some odd condo owners from Carriage Park talking about this issue. But and so when we think about how do we support 200 or so people, I think that the appetite for that is probably much lower than if it were several thousand people, which is my assumption. It's just that we have to quantify the number of units, and I know Juliet as well is working on that in her area of the state and trying to quantify. And I think that they have at least a couple that they've identified. But I imagine, given it seems, I'm under the impression our condo association was aware of this issue for a long time. And I would think that many also are aware of this issue. It's just that there's really, there's no one telling them that they need to disclose this. There's no negative ramifications for not. And similarly for insurance companies, they can drop people, they can increase premiums as high as they want. And people say it's okay. There's no issue. And at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers that are feeling the brunt of this, again, both financially, but I think that there's significant public health costs to having your primary investment on the brink of collapse at any given second. So I think if thousands of people were to echo the words I'm saying, I think that we would get a much different view of this issue. But so yeah, we still need to quantify that, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay. And Harry, I was invited to one of the meetings with Senator Anwar's group, and I'm going to ask his aide, that fell off my radar. I'm going to ask his aide just to send me a recurring invite so that I have it on my calendar every week. Because of I think it's been probably 3 weeks since I attended that. And if I can fit it in, if I recall, he's doing it 5 p.m. Wednesdays or Thursdays, which there's always something going on here, but I'll try to attend that to,
Yeah.
if we're talking about some of the same, if there's an overlap, it'd be good not to be reinventing the wheel, or at least get that information over to this group so we have it to share.
Yeah, and that group meets every Wednesday at 4. And I didn't miss the last meeting, but we've engaged Department of Insurance, we've engaged Consumer Protection, we've also engaged HUD, so Department of Housing as well, just to talk about, again, as many different creative solutions that we can kind of throw up in the air and see which one is the best to catch.
Okay.
Can I make a comment to Chris or Steve? One of the so we're talking a lot about disclosing this information, on the disclosure form. The one that I'm familiar with asks the homeowner things like for environmental contamination, like asbestos, lead, that type of thing. Radon, I think, is on there also. If they know about it, then people will disclose it. But typically there's a financial sort of impact on the sale or the transaction of the home based upon whether those things are present, because we have some real dollars that we can say, okay, it's going to cost this much money to remove, say, 10,000 square feet of floor tile, asbestos floor tile, something like that. So if we make this something that goes on the form or that needs to be disclosed at the time, it's a little more difficult. Like one of the issues we may face is, how does that negotiate into the price of the home or price of the property transaction if needed. Because then what we're kind of saying is, all right, well, we have this risk and there's really not much we can do to remediate it, except you have to pay for it or the insurance company has to cover it. So that's, I think, it may discourage people from even making that transaction. So I don't know, that could be a real problem with those properties. I could foresee that being an issue because there's really no way to quantify and what the actual risk is. So maybe that's something we need to look into. I don't know.
Yeah, no, Mike, we've discussed this definitely at length. I mean, it's just
Yeah, that's
significant.
why I heard you said you had the insurance department in there as well.
Yeah,
sure they-
yeah, they
they-
well, yeah, they they kind of sided with the insurance companies a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's understandable, you know, given kind of the wide range of risks that they're looking at, and this one may not be floating up to the top, but we have a pretty good percentage of folks who are retirement age or beyond that, right? And they're looking at their major investment. And we've already had people come to some of us who have been, you know, bringing up this issue, and in reality, they would like it to not be brought up because of the impact on their current value. You know, somebody myself, I've
That's-
owned it for almost 10 years, but you know, I'm in my 30s, so it's I have a kind of a different outlook on kind of my you know, projected, you know, investments, but some are looking to realize those investments, you know, in the short term, right? And so being really considerate of them as well too, and the impacts that this can have on their quality of life.
Yeah, that's sort of my point as well. That's a great way to put it. Is that if we, you know, we're also talking about educating everybody about this. So if we do that, then that sort of thing is going to happen as well. I mean, I think it's incumbent upon us to do it. It's just, I don't know what sort of impact it's going to have, not only on the sale, like transactions, but also the values. You're 100% correct on that. That's sort of what I'm getting at here.
Well, usually when there's a major issue, whether it's, you know, replacing a roof, whether it's replacing any major component of the buildings that's normal maintenance, you know, there's a special assessment. But that's how that is actually more likely to be negotiated, because frankly, if there's a special assessment, depending on the structure of the special assessment, it may be able to be assumed by the buyer, or it may be have to pay it off at the time of closing. It's negotiated out at that point because you have a hard number.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there's no way to do that on an individual unit holder basis. So frankly, I don't think you get any of that progress done without the association taking the next responsible step and saying, okay, we know these products are beyond their end of their economic life. It's no different than having my roof is shot. I need to figure out a cost and figure out a per unit cost. And I'm surprised they haven't done that yet, so that they can do a hard number. But frankly, if they did that, the unit owners could begin stopping the potential mold issue by addressing this in a structured fashion, and buyers and sellers could negotiate out whatever issue that needs to be negotiated.
So like
But
a per square foot price, you know, hey, if we've identified that this is in the building, every building's different, recognizing that, but a rough estimate per square foot or per fixture or something like that?
yeah, there's always some structure for a special assessment. I mean,
Yeah, so we are very familiar with the special assessment structure, which is how we're paying for our significant increase in premiums. They've already noted that it actually just increased again. So it's probably increased a good 15-20% just on this year, and then will increase again in the coming months as our insurance will increase probably by another $50,000 to $100,000, which would bring it over 300,000, closer to 400,000. That's just for the insurance. But yeah, I think we've also wrangled some rough figures on the per unit cost, given that it would be every single unit in the condo association. And so, you know, we have kind of some rough estimates on that figure, obviously extrapolated out by a number of units. And I think we could probably have a rough range on what that cost would be. But again, I think at the end of the day, that solution puts the full cost on the homeowners currently. So if that's the direction that the group or the legislator wants to take, then, you know, but that's just realizing what that solution really means.
Okay. I have a hard stop at 11, and I know this is on the calendar for 11, an hour and a half, which, but today I have a commitment at 11:30. I got to be down the road. So I wanted to just, in closing, the last 5 minutes that we have, I've got some takeaways. Talk about disclosures. I'm going to try to work on a plumber and a building official before next week, at least to get them suggested. And I will definitely reach out to the Community Association Institute, who is the association for condo associations, and get their take on what their awareness is around these pipes, and if there is an educational campaign, what they're doing about it. Is there anything else, takeaways, that I need to provide before next week? And if in the meantime, if you've got ideas, things that you want to discuss specifically, please submit those to Beverly, and she'll get them to me, in advance, and I'll come as prepared as I can to these meetings to discuss those as a group, so that maybe you're aware of, or aware each week, what the goal is that we want to accomplish. Any parting words? I know, Paul, we didn't hear from you. Anything that we missed, anything that I should be preparing for next week that when we get here next week, that you'd like to see?
The only thing I'll chime in with is that there needs to be a recognition, and I'm sure there is amongst the people on this group, that various condo associations, their charter papers are going to be different. So for instance, in the condo that I'm involved with, while the pipes may be inside the wall, if it serves only your unit, it's your problem. If the pipes run through the building and serve multiple units off of that pipe, then it's an association problem. But that said, regardless, even if it's an association problem, as we've heard earlier today, the association still is the condo owners. And in the condo that I'm dealing with, we're going through the same problem that Harry's going through. Our insurance has skyrocketed over 100% for other issues. So this issue comes up, but I'm comfortable that in our association, our buildings were built in 73 and 74. And I know they're all copper, but I also, as I stressed in last weekend's meeting, they're leaking too, and they're copper. So it's a similar problem, but just begs to know what's eating, literally what's eating the copper, and how we're going to mitigate that problem, as well as the PV problem.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing to solve when you've got leaks popping up sporadically, and some copper may be, again, we're talking two different animals. This plastic, again, has a shelf life, as Dan pointed out. This version, anyhow, copper, somebody's unit probably could be good for 100 years, and the next guy over has his started with 15 years, and I'm not sure how you solve for that variation, but I mean, making people aware that there is a potential.
Education is going to be key.
Yeah, education is that's where I know I'm certain we can have an impact. That part I'm certain of is education and awareness. We can have an impact from this group. Beyond that, in terms of solving and fixing and repairing, I'm not sure how far our reach will be, but I'm certain that we can have an impact. That's what we were asked to do. So, do
you have a contact at CAI?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Both Kim and Ellen, I know them very well, so I can pick up the phone, and
right.
we're paying members, so I can call. They're just outside my district, but and I did serve on their legislative action committee prior to getting elected. So, anyway, I certainly can make that call to find out what they know and what they can share and help. So before we get back next week, I'll just do a brief I'll make sure that a brief recap goes out to this group. And if you've got action items or you got something that you want to discuss, please throw it out to Beverly, and I'll make sure that either it's acknowledged and hopefully we have time for it in the next meeting, or that we add it to the list of things we want to discuss and address. Okay? So I thank everybody and appreciate you bearing with me as we're kind of getting my arms around this. I kind of figured that we weren't going to solve it by the second meeting, but last week, just kind of knowing who that everybody is on the call, this week, getting a better understanding of the issues. And hopefully as we, roll into the end of the year, we'll have some good action items and some hopefully some solutions that we can present to the legislature to put into practice. So again, I thank everybody for your time, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks,
Thank
Sam. Sam.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
And